So, CD Projekt Red has released its first and probably last expansion for Cyberpunk 2077, along with Update 2.0, which effectively changes the entire game, from its skill tree to its driving mechanics to a bunch of other things I'll probably list somewhere over here. It changes the entire game and overall makes it way better. And it has a lot of people saying that this is the version of the game that should have released way back in December of 2020. Now, one thing I've been seeing is this almost revisionist look at history, and especially the state of the game back then, with some people saying that Cyberpunk 2077 was always good. Was Cyberpunk 2077 always good? It's complicated. So let's go back to the start. So Cyberpunk is announced in 2012, with the first teaser trailer arriving later in 2013. Fast forward a couple of years and we hear absolutely nothing about the project until the first ever full release trailer at E3 2018. And that's pretty much when the hype train pretty much kicks back into gear after years of relative silence. The first announcement was in 2013, the game released in 2020, 2 console generations later, and we have it. We have the game. After a bunch of delays, it finally released, and it didn't release in the greatest of states. I played Cyberpunk on my PC when it first came out, and for a while that was relatively the only way you were going to play it. Mostly because the console releases, which I will get into in more detail shortly, were an absolute disaster. They barely ran, it was very low quality, and overall not a great experience. So I boot up the game. Does it crash? Oh yeah, it crashed a bunch of times, which in terms of overall quality of release, it was hot garbage. It was not great at all, but thankfully, I had a gaming PC that was pretty much qualified to take it. These were the specs I had at the time. Processor was a little bit down there, but to be fair, it was only, I think at the time, 2 generations out. Since then, it has been upgraded, but at the time, it did the job relatively well. And to be fair, even for a system like this, I was still having to operate at low settings. But once it was stable, after about an update or two in a couple of weeks, I flew. I absolutely flew with this game. I haven't grinded an RPG this hard since Skyrim. The side quests are fantastic. The main story, I'll be flat out honest, I don't like the main story. Now, I'm going to get into some spoiler territory here, not for the DLC, because I'm actually still working my way through that, which has actually prompted me to make this video, but just in the base game. So, in terms of the base game, I know all the endings. I know the bad ones to the good ones. In fact, I'm going to change good to hopeful. So, I went off with Pan Am at the end of the game, and that was probably the male V. I went with male V. Probably the best ending you could get, in my opinion. It was quite bleak. You were still going to die, but were you happy? I'd say so. You got out in Night City, you'll spend the rest of what limited time you have left with Pan Am, and, you know, that's just great in itself, because, I mean, the dynamic between V and Johnny Silverhand was fantastic, and your control over it, really, because you could spend the entire game hating him, or kind of just see him as a brother by the end of it, which, in mine, pretty much, that's what it came to be. When I say that Cyberpunk 2077 was always a good game, that is based purely on my opinion. Factually, I would say no. It has not always been a great game. It was actually a bit of a disaster and probably has become some sort of case study in a university somewhere on how to not release your game. It felt very rushed to market. The console versions did not work to the point where the PS4 version got delisted because Sony decided they couldn't have this broke product on their marketplace. It was an unmitigated disaster. Their stock plummeted from all-time highs before the game released and has actually never recovered and still continues a downward trend to this day. The reason I know that is because, like an idiot, I invested in them the day after Cyberpunk released. I don't know why I did that. And maybe that is showing you, new viewer, that perhaps I am not the smartest cookie in the room. Or one to listen to, for that matter. So what happened next became a very long and arduous task on CD Projekt Red's end to correct things. Now, I will give the company props. They could have just cut and run. They could have just released the product, broke as hell, maybe 1 or 2 patches, and then moved on. But to be fair, I think they were genuinely getting sued, so they had to be really careful with what they did. But over the next 3 years, what has happened has been a No Man's Sky style success story. Cyberpunk 2077 has now become one of my top 5 games of all time. It was already in my top 10, but since then it has now gone all the way into the top 5, thanks to the quality of life improvements that they've made, not to mention one of the best introductions to an expansion story I've ever played in my life. It was so goddamn cool. No spoilers. The gameplay you're seeing is of the expansion Phantom Liberty, but there will be no spoilers in that gameplay. I've made sure of that. It is some of the best writing I've ever seen in a expansion as well, which, to be fair, let's be real, this is from the same guys that did Hearts of Stone and Blood and Wine, which I've both played, and they are both amazing. They're pretty much... Blood and Wine is an entirely new game in itself. There's just so much to do, and that is exactly what Phantom Liberty is. It is beautiful. The bottom line is, when it comes to this video and what I'm trying to say, was Cyberpunk 2077 always a good game? Yeah. On a mid to high end range PC. Even a mid-range PC would struggle, like mine did. Low range, you've got no hope in hell, unless you install a bunch of mods that allow you to do that. Console, nope. Their next-gen update didn't come out for a couple of months. In fact, I'm pretty sure it came out, like, over a year after the game released. The Xbox One X version was apparently fine. Every other version was not. Even the PS4 Pro struggled, if I remember correctly. Watch Digital Foundry's video on it. They do a great breakdown of all of it, from when it first released to now. But to say it was always a good game net is very revisionist and wrong, because it wasn't. It was probably one of the worst modern releases I've ever seen. I just got lucky, and I imagine a lot of people got lucky as well. And thankfully, the company cared enough about it to keep going, building on it, adding new small updates, and then 2 big updates with Cyberpunk 2.0 and the Phantom Liberty expansion. They both changed the game. And I can say with good conscience, I heavily recommend playing this game. For £25, it is a fantastic deal. It's actually the only game I've bought this month, and the only one I actually intend to until Alan Wake 2. Can't wait for Alan Wake 2. It looks scary as shit. Absolutely, let's go. But yeah, this video, nothing serious. Nothing serious. Bottom line is just talking about a Twitter thing I saw where someone was saying this, and I'm like, is that true? It's sort of, kind of, not really, but also yes, based on personal experience. And yeah, that is about it. I'm curious to see how long this video clocks in at, because it's only 16 minutes so far before I chop everything down. But yeah, thank you all very much for watching this video. I will see you in the next one, which I hope is games design related, because I have some updates regarding that. And I shall see you in the next video. Thank you very much. Bye now.